Our scripture reading comes this morning from the Gospel of Luke, again the 10th chapter, verses 38 through 42. Would you stand as we read Holy Scripture? Would you hear the reading of God's holy word? Now as they went on their way, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is needful. Mary has chosen the good portion, which shall not be taken away from her. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So, hopefully you've already figured out, as I said to the children just a minute ago, I've been talking to them about prayer, and I'm going to continue to talk to them about prayer as long as I am your pastor, because prayer is the most important thing that we can do as the church. And they need to learn that right now. And they need to learn to be prayer warriors, because the church is in trouble. Our world is in trouble. And we need praying people. And without that, we can gather together every day, all day long, literally. But if we're not praying, we can call ourselves the church. But if we're not praying, if we're not people of the Spirit, then we will never be the church, and we can never accomplish what we as the church need to accomplish. One day this week, I can't remember when it was, Mary and I are both very close to retirement. All of my life, pretty much, at least the part of life that I can remember, I thought that I would retire to a place that my family affectionately calls Aunt Lillian's place. My family has about 17 acres there. There was a house there until 4 months ago when the tornado came and tore it up. And so, as you can imagine, living your whole life thinking that's the place you're going to live when you retire, and then the tornado coming a few years from your retirement and tearing it up, it kind of threw a curveball, if you will, into our plan. And so, and not to mention also, or to mention also, that the house was a little smaller, well, really a lot smaller. My wife has a lot of stuff. And so to get all of her stuff, we'd need a bigger house than what Aunt Lillian had. And so we were going to need to build a bigger house. And so we recently had the timber cut. And for the first time that I can remember, I'm sure at some point it was cut when I was a kid and I just don't remember. But for the first time that I can remember in my life, the timber was cut and you could see the landscape. And it looks beautiful when 40-year-old pine trees are all standing there tall and proud. But when it was cut, you could see that there's a beautiful flat spot pretty much on the back of the property. And then there's this huge, it slopes off, and there's this huge gorge or ravine that runs down from basically the top right of the property, the northeast corner, down to the southwest corner. And there's a little flat land on the front. And so I had a friend of mine from Felder go with me, and I said, you know, Mac, this is what I'd like to do. Some of you know him, Mac McEwen, James knows him. And I said, this is what I'd like to do. And we carried him over there to look at it, and he looked at me and he said, Danny, way more money than it's worth to get the land ready to build your house, and then you're not going to have any money left to build your house. And that was hard to hear, because for 50-something years, I'm almost 63, but you know, since I was about 12 or 13, I thought probably that's where I'd live, you know, that's where I would die. And so it was hard to hear that that dream wasn't going to come to pass. And we're almost back here, and he said, Danny, we went with a friend to their camp meeting the other day. She's always came to our camp meeting, and so Becky and I, his wife, Becky and I thought we ought to go to her camp meeting with her. And we went. And he said, Danny, we're missing something in our church. He wasn't talking about his church specifically. He was talking about our church, the Methodist church. He said, we're missing something in our church. He said, they're out in the middle of nowhere like we are, but there was 1,000 people there. And he wasn't exaggerating. And he said, the only people who were sitting down were the people who couldn't stand up. I said, were they jumping and shouting? He said, they were jumping and shouting, and they were shaking their tambourines, and they were dancing, and they were singing, and they were praising God. And I said, Mac, there's a direct correlation between how rich we are as a society as Methodist and how poor we are in spirituality as Methodist. I don't know how much you know about American Christianity, about your Wesleyan heritage, but we, the people of the Methodist Church, started out dirt poor. There were no rich people in the Methodist Church to begin with. I'm not saying there wasn't any, but there weren't many. There were so few that you can say there were no rich people in the Methodist Church. But the richer we got as a church over the last 300, 280 years, whatever it's been, the richer we've gotten societally, socioeconomically, the poorer the church has gotten. The more we've become what we think is self-sustainable, right? When I've got money to do what I want, if I were a multi-millionaire, I'd throw $500,000 at that dirt on Ligon's place and I'd make it what I want it to be, right? But I'm not a multi-millionaire. I'm not even a multi-thousandaire, right? If that's such a thing. I don't have the extra chunk of change. It'd take a boatload, a shipload, a couple of shiploads of dirt to get it where it needs to be. But if I had that money, I would think, oh, I'm self-sufficient. I can do what I want to do, right? And that's what's happened to us. We've become self-sufficient. And when we become self-sufficient, we don't think we need God, right? And so we forget that prayer is important. Time to pray. So, time to eat. What's that mean? I mean, supper's ready or lunch is ready. It's on the table. Mama said, come, you better come, right? But time to eat. Time to eat. Do we have time to eat? You see what I'm saying? Time to eat means it's go get it. Time to eat. We've got to be at the meeting in 15 minutes. Do we have time to eat? Time to pray. I'm saying to you that it is time for us as the church to get serious about prayer. And if you don't have a strong prayer life, don't feel like the Lone Ranger, because most of the people sitting in pews today in the United States don't have a strong prayer life. Why? Because most of the people sitting in pews today think they're self-sufficient and they don't really need to pray. Okay? I'm getting some funny looks, but I'm not making this up. You know how I know it? Because most of the people in the United States today aren't sitting in a pew. And if we had a strong prayer life, we would be making a difference in the community about us. Max said, Danny, we're missing something, and he's exactly right. And prayer is the beginning of the answer of what we're missing. Don't raise your hand. I don't want you to do that, but I want you to answer this in your own heart. How many of you pray every day? And I'm not talking about saying good meat, good bread, good meat, good gosh, let's eat. That doesn't count. I mean, it counts as a prayer, right? We are giving thanks. But that's not the kind of prayer life that I'm talking about. Several years ago, a young man by the name of David was getting married. David was one of my church members when I was in divinity school at Duke. And David called me. I graduated in 1990, so it had been like 25 years or so since I was David's pastor. And he called me and he said, Danny, I'm getting married and I would like you to come and take part in the ceremony in North Carolina. And I said, I'd be glad to. And he said, I remember your prayers when you were my preacher. He didn't say he remembered anything that I said in a sermon. He didn't even say at my wedding. What do you remember about your grandmother or your great-grandfather? There are some things that my grandfather said that I remember, but mostly I remember their attitude and their work ethic. You see, our attitudes about things go a long way into making a difference. If you were to find students of Stan's, I guarantee you there are those who would say, I remember him being a person who cared for us. Maybe don't remember anything he said to them, but they remember that he was a person who cared for them, that took care of them, made sure that school was happening like it needed to happen. And the same thing can be said of our teachers. The things that we do make a difference. But in order to do what we need to do as the church, I mean, we can do a lot of things, right? But to do what we need to do as the church, we have to be a people of prayer. I hope you're getting, my dad said to me, he said, Danny, he said, you can preach on tithing every Sunday, and the only people who are going to complain to you about preaching on tithing are the people who don't tithe, because the ones who are tithing are carrying the load for the church financially, and they want you to get the other people to help. All right? So the 80-20 rule, and the inverse of that is the 20-80 rule. But the 80-20 rule is that 80% of the work or the giving or the anything else in any organization is done by 20% of the people. And the inverse of that is 20% of the people do 80% of the work or give 80% of the money. And it's true almost without fail in every organization. You think about it. Jonathan said to me, Jessica is your go-to person. If you need to get something done, Jessica is the one you need to call. All right? She will make it happen. She's one of your 20% people who do 80% of the work. Y'all know that, right? Did I just tell y'all a secret? Y'all knew that, right? And so I hope all of you are in that that percentage that says, when you hear me talk about prayer, and we're going to talk about it today and next week particularly, but when you hear me talk to you about prayer, I hope that resonates with you that, yeah, give us some more of that. Yeah, we need that encouragement. We're already doing it, but if it's new to you, and that's okay if it is, today's the day to begin the habit or the ritual of prayer. Now, there's lots of different kinds of prayer. There's prayers of thanksgiving. We give thanks, O Lord, for the bounty you've given to us. There's prayers of intercession. Lord, help us get our car fixed. Help us be able to be strong to do what we need to do. There's prayers of forgiveness, right? There's prayers of adoration. There's all kinds of different prayers. Some prayers are reactive prayers. Y'all know what I mean by that? We react to a situation. About 30 years ago now, I was riding my motorcycle up to Lake Stevens to a Board of Trustees meeting. It was a beautiful September afternoon, and I was going you have to go the back roads to get there because it's out in the back country. And so I'm riding down the road, and it's a newly paved road, and I look down at my speedometer, and I'm doing 80 on my Honda 750, and which is nothing really on a motorcycle. I mean, 80 is just kind of cruising speed, right, on a motorcycle. And I see this long curve ahead of me, and so I lean into this long sweeping curve, and as I go by the sign that I didn't see because the tree limb was covering it up, I didn't notice the warning sign that had what on it? A big old S. Y'all know what an S curve is, right? And the first half of the S curve was nice and sweeping, and at 80 it wasn't nothing. And I stood up to expect to see another nice sweeping to go back, but what I saw was a dog leg. Y'all know what a dog leg is? It's this. I'm here, and this is the curve. And there was a reactive prayer that I can't say in church that took place. I'm human, in case you don't know. But basically it was like, I'm sure wanted to say to me, I didn't tell you to do 80 in that curve. I didn't tell the people not to cut the limbs so you couldn't see the S-curve sign. I didn't put you in this predicament, but I'm with you. Obviously, I lived. Wasn't pretty. I walked away from it somehow, limping a little bit, but I walked away. That was a reactive prayer. A situation took place that I hadn't planned on, and I called on God. What do you call on if you're not prayed up? Y'all know what prayed up means? It's an old term that the old black preachers used to talk about. Need to get prayed up. What do you think that means? To be prayed up? Huh? Somebody say something over here? I'm well, good. What is if you're prayed up, you're right with God. Not only are you right with God, but you're ready. You're ready to deal with whatever the day has got to offer. If you're prayed up, you see that challenge of that dog leg of the second half of the S-curve, and you say, bring it on. I am ready for it. Martin Luther, y'all know that name? Martin Luther is considered the father of the Protestant He started the Protestant Revolution. Can't say the word. Reformation. Thank you. Protestant Reformation. He nailed the 95 Theses on the door at the Church of Wittenberg, and he had a lot of complaints with the church, and it started the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther prayed 1 hour. The first thing he did every morning was to pray 1 hour a day. And he said when he had more things that he could do in the day, he prayed for 2 hours. Now, conventional wisdom of the world would say if you've got more than you can do today, you need to skip praying 1 hour this morning and you need to get on with it, right? That's conventional wisdom. Spiritual wisdom says you need to get prayed up. You need to get right with God. You need to make sure all your ducks are in a row spiritually. And be ready. Time to pray. Do you take time to pray? Do you make time to pray? Abraham Lincoln was on his way home with his aide Noah, and Noah said to him, "Sir, when you get back to the White House, you need to go in for a rest." And he said, "This rest you speak of, I know it's good for the body, but where I'm tired, where I'm wore out is inside." Tired? You ever been so tired that your bones were tired? When we're self-sufficient, it's easy to run out of gas. When we're doing things ourselves, it's easy to get to the point that we don't have the strength to go it anymore. Do you take time to pray? Do you make time to pray? I want to tell you, like Max said to me this last week, we're missing something. And the only way we're going to get it is to pray. For me to pray, for our children who are playing to pray, for you to pray for me, to pray for yourselves, to pray for those who aggravate us. Yeah. I know it's only the third Sunday and I've done quit preaching and gone to meddling, right? But the reality is that we have to pray for those who aggravate us. So there's a show that Mary and I have been watching. I finished it last night. She'll finish it probably tonight. But it's called MI5. It's on Prime. And y'all know what MI5 is, right? It's like the CIA, but it's the British version. MI5 is their secret spy organization that they do all of this keeping up with what's going on and try to keep people terrorists and all that stuff. And in the show, there's two Islamists who are preparing to go and to do jihad, right? To be bombers, suicide bombers. And one of them is trying to talk the other one out of it. And he says, Muhammad said to the people on return from the battle, they're returning from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. To the far more urgent and momentous task of removing the wrongdoing from one's own heart. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? I mean, Jesus said the same thing to us, right? Do you ever pray, Lord, remove the wrongdoing from my heart? Help me to be a better Christian, to be a more faithful, true disciple. We're missing something, folks. And money, if one of you wins the lottery and you come back and give it to the church, that ain't going to be the fix. I mean, yeah, we could do a new paint job. We could fix the plaster. You know, you could do lots of stuff with that money, but it's not going to fix what's wrong with the Christian church. The fix comes from prayer. It comes from us getting prayed up. It comes from us getting our heart right with Jesus. And that sounds easy, but it's not easy. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes work. But if we're going to be the church, if we are going to be the church of Jesus Christ, that is the way that it happens. As long as I'm your pastor, I'm going to preach that in the children's sermons to the children. I'm going to teach them that prayer is not just true for Alice, who's almost 6, I think, but it's true for Mary Jo, it's true for Jessica, it's true for Danny Ray, it's true for James, it's true for Nathan, it's true for every one of us. If we want to be right with Jesus, we've got to pray. We've got to do the work. It's the only way that we can be the church.